Is the Minister of Finance, Enoch Godongwana. We need to take a quick ad break. We're back after this. Stay with us.
Need a new bed this festive season? Give yourself the gift of good sleep with free delivery on all beds over 5,999. With the best deals in town.
And without fear of contradiction, I want to say we also dropped the ball because we focus on fixing Eskom than on fixing power to the grid. There's a difference between these two. There's a difference between those two. What is required is a focus on both. We've been putting money on Eskom. I don't know when people say, no, Eskom needs more resources. Between 2019 and to date, we've put 230 billion rand to Eskom. 230 billion rand to Eskom. I don't know what people mean when they say Eskom need dollars. They're also charging people. So they are revenue generating people through their electricity tariff. So what is needed is a couple of things. But before doing that, let me take a step and say, precisely because of these challenges Eskom is facing. I was debating this matter in Parliament. People are saying, you continue bailing out. I said, by the way, the bulk of Eskom's debt is guaranteed by the sovereign. So if I don't take out, Eskom will drag me down with them when they fail to do that. So I'm between a rock and a hard place. So we're going to take that debt. Carol Patton must not ask the question today. I told her in October that I'm not going to give you the quantum. Some of the journalists who ask all these difficult questions. Carol Patton is one of them. So the quantum of that debt will depend on a number of things. One of which is what NERSA will say. Because it will determine Eskom's sustainability moving forward. And I'm a practical person in life. I know what to expect in these things. What does that mean? It means that even if, for argument's sake, we're to say, NERSA were to say, oh, Eskom, you've got a case, have 32. I don't know what they're going to say. My practical mind says the politicians are going to say, no, that's too much. Right? But if they say to Eskom that's too much, we've got to say, what is the bottom line? Which, avoid the impact on the consumer, but at the same time, allow Eskom to be sustainable. Because in future, I don't want an Eskom that comes back to me after settling that debt. So from that financial point of view, we're working hard with Eskom. And I'm told, interesting enough, by journalists, not by, I didn't know that I'm delivering the budget speech on the 22nd of February. I don't know it. your colleagues can tell me. So that's how bureaucrats work. So I need, by that date, to be able to be explicit. There was a market expectation in October was that I was going to be explicit. I can't continue to daily. I must be explicit on that day. In the meantime, what needs to be done? What needs to be done? First, we've got to assess what are these operational inefficiencies, if any, in Eskom, because our takeover date will have to have the people in the finance sector said conditions precedent. So we look to do that assessment. The next set of issues is the focus by Eskom on plant performance. The third element to that, I'm not sure whether Eskom is the right vehicle for that, is new capacity. So I don't care who deliver that new capacity, whether somebody from Mars is material, or I want electricity to the grid. Another constraint, which is becoming another Eskom, is the logistics sector. If you ask the coal guys, miners, they will tell you that since 1996, they've always between 70 and 77 million tons at Richards Bay. 2021, we're at where we were in 1996, by just going over 50 million tons. The prediction is that this year we'll have 49. That's a cost to the economy in the form of revenue for business, in the form of tax for me. So we need to do something about that sector. Some of them are, I'm going to come back to both Eskom, some of them are not their own creation. I'll come back to that. So we're going to force deals, logistics, both rail and ports, to give us, the estimate by the mining industry is that if they were to have what they call I can't use the language, but if they were to get the optimal use of both rail and port, they would have made 150 billion more this year. And I would have got 27 billion more on revenue. So there are operational issues, the issues beyond their control. I was saying last night, there are two issues which Eskom are outside Eskom's control. The first one is the regulatory environment, which we need to sort out. But the operational inefficiencies are theirs. The third element, which is not theirs, is crime and corruption. Our nation is facing difficulties because of crime and corruption. Now, that affects both Eskom and Transnet. These are matters that need to be taken seriously from our side. The last issue I raised there was the weak state capacity. I'm going to come back to that when I deal with the infrastructure issues, because one of the key things that we're beginning to focus on is the infrastructure spending. This year, penciled into the current financial year, we've got 247 billion rand across the state municipalities. They've got 68 billion of that. The provinces have got about 63. State-owned enterprises have got about 73 billion rand. The rest is with national government. Now, oh. But then what I mean, then, to do this thing, we must take a step. I'm going to come back to the infrastructure issues. What then is needed? We have got to transform this economy in a number of ways. The first one is trade patterns. Both the global financial crisis and the Russia-Ukraine war have made it clear that our economy is too vulnerable, because historically it's an economy which has trade links more with the West. Anything that happens there, for instance, during the global financial crisis, we're the only country on the African continent to lose about 2 million jobs. So it's not diversified enough. Part of that diversification is to how to make sure that change that diversification to reduce that vulnerability. When we talk about economic transformation, we don't only talk about black economic empowerment, we talk about also reducing this vulnerability. The second point is current structure of the economy reflect the apartheid fault lines, whether it's employment, whether it's ownership, whether anything. Those things cannot be pushed to the back of the agenda. How you do it, though, is a matter of detail, in such a manner that it should not be an obstacle to growth. But the outcome of all of these things must lead to employment. Must lead to employment. But here's another structural constraint on the supply side. If you were to have a booming economy tomorrow, where would you get the skilled people you require? It's a matter of that needs attention. We've got a system of vocational training which is not linked to practical skills. And as a result, roughly about 1 million of these people that are unemployed have got this training, some training, but they lack the practical accesses to get a trade certificate. So that's something that needs to need prior attention, that's skills. We need also to focus on small and medium enterprises. And sort of, it's a matter which is attended by everybody, but no one, and will not achieve. You can go to a national, to a province, to a local government. There's some work, there's some funding, but it's uncoordinated and therefore not making the right impact. In the light of the electricity challenges, one is rethinking to refocus the bounce back scheme, which was intended for small enterprise in any frame, from the guy who's going to get a loan from 10,000 to 10 million. How do you refocus that bounce back scheme so that townships and small and medium enterprise can access this money, which is guaranteed by government, to switch into whether solar or any other renewables in their works, so that they should not lose the during this load shedding. It's undermining small business a great deal. So it's something we're thinking, refocus the bounce back scheme to support small and medium enterprise. Let me just make some few points so that I allow you to ask me as much as you can. One thing I've learned as a politician is to speak. One time I was asked to open a NAFCOC meeting in Mzamba in Eastern Cape. I didn't look at the program. It turns that poor people expected me to do the opening remarks for 10 minutes, and I spoke for 1 hour, 10 minutes. That's me. So, let me come back to the infrastructure. I said I've got this 247 billion rand. I was asking my people, why can't I see stop and goes? That reflects the capacity. Over the last week, I was in the eastern part of the Eastern Cape. There, over the next 3 years, we'll be spending about 12 billion rand on building the R52 from Kokstad to Matatia, building another 1.5 to 1.8 billion rand in Mtentu River Bridge. We will also be starting the Mzimvubu Dam. All of those things are in close proximity. So that area alone will be, over the next 3 years, benefit from 12 billion rand investment. But here's the challenge. Here's the challenge. Is capacity to spend. We publish every quarter what is called Section 32 reports on our website, which show the current spending patterns. They don't look good. We publish Section 71 for municipalities, which show the trend of spending. So one thing we need to check up is that capacity. But we're also on the investment front, trying to crowd in. We're talking to the Asisagas, which is insurance and pensions. Crowd their investment into the social infrastructure space. As I close, climate change is with us. A colleague of mine, when I was talking about KZN and now Gauteng and Eastern Cape, says, no, I mean, this stuff is climate variability. I said, you may be correct, but the frequency suggests something else. The frequency suggests something else that needs to be attended to. As you are aware, the developed world announced 8.5 billion US dollars, and everybody was excited. Everybody was excited. However, it remains one thing, it remains debt. It remains one thing, it remains debt. I must confess that in certain areas, in certain countries, we've been able to get some concessional loans. It's not a grant, it's debt. And a component of that is a component of that is grants small. Let me just tell you my picture of this stuff. If you look at South Africa, you are going to do this decarbonization process. We have got 13 power stations in one area, 13 in Mpumalanga. You've got the mines that supply these things, say 13 for argument's sake. Forget about the ones that are exporting. Now, if we had to decommission those things, which we are, there's no option. What is, in other words, you need an alternative development model for the area. Despite the excitement about commodity projects, I'm not, in terms of employment and social impact. All right? So what you do need is another development. What that development model is going to look like, I don't have an idea, but we'll need resources, and which we think the developed world must help us with. Resources also to look at what is that kind of development model for us to be able to do that. They promised. In Cancun, they said they're going to give us 100 billion per annum. In Paris, they said, yes, we're going to develop a quantum. What that quantum is, we'll figure out as we go along. But we're not going to undermine the 100 billion. I was asking my colleague, Barbara Chris, in COP27, is there anything new coming? I couldn't find it. She says, look, it's less precise as it has been. And the moral argument has been that these emissions have been caused by the developed world, not by us. So the developed world has got to come to the plate and say, look, if we have got to move all of us together, you know, there's a German economist, Friedrich List. Friedrich List made an important point because he was in the USA and grew up during the time of Secretary Hamilton. Old times. I think secretaries are finished in 1785 or something, but Friedrich List grew up in that environment and watched the British and the Americans, and he wrote in his book, I can't remember the title now, but I have it. He says, the problem with the model you're proposing now of this free trade at the time and doing this, says, you're actually saying you've used a particular ladder for your growth. You've used a particular ladder for your growth, but you're pulling it down for us, not to send the use grow, pulling away the ladder. Hajun Chung's titled book, which title is Pulling the Diet, is borrowed from Hajun Chung's title. He titled his book that, but he borrowed from Friedrich List. So we've got this debate and dialogue on the developing world. So this is an important debate we want to place on the table, we continue to place on the table. And again, interesting enough, Janet Yellen in her speech on the 6th of October has placed another thing on the agenda, which I think the G7 now have accepted it, that the review of the multinational development institutions. Now, it's a matter which we discussed on the 11th of October with her. You had some ministers of finance, and we need to wrap our minds as the developing world as to what that means for us, because we may not have the same definition of what that means. As I conclude, we wish to assure you that we are on a course at a political level to rebuild, renew the African National Congress so that it should be able to provide the leadership it has done and to win the elections, because if we don't, we go into these coalitions that are unreliable, if our experience in municipalities is bad. The second component of that is to grow this economy. What did it mean to grow this economy? The third element of that as we grow this economy, to continue to provide support to those that are vulnerable in our society. How that support is, we've got to make off the necessary trade-offs. So, thank you very much, Sipho.
Thank you. Thank you, Putina. Thank you. Thank you, Minister. Enoch, please join you'll sit here on the stage, Enoch. You can't run away. It's too early. You can sit here. Thanks, Enoch, and thank you for the input. We will invite everyone. We'll open up for questions. We have the mic. The team is having the roving mics. Before we invite everyone to ask questions, we designed the brochures for the conference. PBF has designed the brochures for the conference. On your seats, you'll see there's this brochure. We also have the PBF magazine and the PBF prospectus. This brochure is giving you an idea in terms of the ANC program, the conference program, the programs of this morning breakfast. We also have exhibitors. We have put Enoch as part of driving the township economy. We have invited township businesses to come and exhibit, and PBF has made sure that they exhibit for free, so that we give them an exposure. Let me invite, if there's any questions, please show of hands, and just name, say name, introduce yourself so that we also know where you're coming from. Let me start on the left, not because of any other reason. There's a lady at the back, and then there's a gentleman, that will be number 2. And then I've seen a hand here, that will be number 3. And then there'll be number 4. Please introduce yourself.
Good morning. Thank you so much, convener. Minister, my name is Ntombi Mbele. I'm the Economic and Trade Advisor at the Embassy of Switzerland. Thank you for giving us a great lay of the land of what's going on with the fiscus. 2 questions, Minister. The first one is, what is the status quo on the public sector wage bill from the time that you spoke at the midterm budget? Has there been any change? Can we look forward to something on the 22nd of February? Second question, like Putsipo had mentioned, that the Treasury will be quite integral with the just transitions in the township economy. What are the specific programs that your team will coordinate with the township economy sector, with business sector, as well as with the other state departments? Because we sometimes suspect that there's not much coordination that we are seeing from the Treasury's point of view with the justice in the just transition. Thank you.
Thank you. Ntombi, the gentleman.
Morning, Minister. My name is Michael. I'm from Single Investment Holdings. I was waiting for your elaboration on the issue of Eskom. You said we are 14 years in the load shedding, and you have spent 230 billion rand. I was sitting here, I was scared. But I was waiting to hear, Hori, what is the solution? What is it? What do you think can solve our Eskom problem? Because really, if you are telling us it's affecting the performance of 40% business, I would be scared if I were you. Thanks.
Thank you. There's a gentleman behind cameras. Please introduce yourself.
Good morning. I'm Tshepo Mongwe from SABC.
Oh, okay.
To the Minister, I know during the budget, medium-term budget policy statement, you announced that you are in talks with the creditors at Eskom. Can you update us as to how those negotiations are going in terms of, as you indicated a short while ago, that you are determined to take that portion of the Eskom debt? Thank you.
Thank you. And then there's, okay, let's allow we'll have another round of questions. Okay, because you are next to the gentleman, you can take the question and then we'll allow the minister to answer, then we'll take the second round of questions. I hope it's fine. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Veli Mtiane from the SABC News. Considering the situation that we are currently observing around the conference, which is the deepening of the factions. And my question is, the change, if there will be any, of the ANC leadership, how is it going to affect the macroeconomic policy stance of the country, depending on who emerges victorious in this conference, and how is that going to impact on the investor confidence? And lastly, how is the party going to ensure that whoever emerges victorious in this conference in terms of the leadership, but all things remain the same in terms of the progress that is being made so far? Thanks.
Thank you. Let me invite the Minister to respond to the questions. We have 4 questions. Minister? 5.
She asked 2.
Oh, okay.
She asked 2. As we have indicated, in terms of the public sector wage bill, we, from a government perspective, we've settled for this year. We have even penciled the carry-through cost of the 3% into the next year. If you read the budget documents, you'll see that there's a 14 billion in the next financial year. We would prefer that we begin the wage negotiations for the next financial year with unions as soon as possible. Let me tell you why. Even here in the conference, a number of people are pulling me aside. I said, but you're going to take the 1,000 rand allowance in April, which I'm going to take. Yeah, that's because it's a 1-year dispensation. However, if we negotiate between now and March, we can quickly close that chapter. And if we decide to continue with the 1,000, it's a matter that we can agree with unions. But at the moment, we're not talking. The second question about coordination of the just transition. The just transition coordination is led by my colleague, Barbara Chris. I'm part of that team, but there's an added dimension. Yours is 3 questions, basically. The second dimension is the township economy. My sense, the level of development of the township economy is uneven across the country. Gauteng has done a lot, including a legislation. We've been working well with Pax Dau in the Gauteng space and coordinating with them. And again, we allow them to lead because it's their own activity. We'll continue to work with the new MEC. I already spoke to her that we needed to meet and discuss that. Eskom solution, I've said there are a couple of things that need to be done. The first thing we're going to do is to take some of their debt, which to make their balance sheet healthier in order for them to be able to go to the market with ease. The second thing that we're saying, we've got to get them to focus on plant performance. The third thing we've got to do is to get new capacity, not rely on Eskom. Is it simple? Don't take him a chance. The discussion of the details of takeover of Eskom, including creditors, budget danger, not today. I can't deal with that today. The outcome of this election, you know, I was on Bloomberg the other day. I said, by the way, only Mandela, we fired all the president other than Mandela. It's our nature, we maybe seem chaotic. It's only Mandela who was safe, we never fired. We can't guarantee that this one won't be fired. So we can't do that. But what are the key lessons to be learned from those things? whether it's Mbeki, whether it's Zuma and so on, is that as a party, unlike in the USA, where the policy belongs to the president, as a party, the policy belongs to the party. So irrespective of the change in government, the party will continue to pursue its policies. Now, let me just say, I'm not panicking an inch about who comes out. I've worked with all of the individuals that work. I've worked with Zweli as well. I've worked with the president. The interesting thing, the different lineups, if you ask me, I'm not worried an inch. Those are people who have got a better grasp of the challenges of this economy. Better grasp of the challenges of this economy. Those of you who know the president know he's quite committed. Those of you who know Zweli, even during his time as Treasurer General, he was very active in coordinating businesses and so on and supportive. So I don't want to discredit any candidate there, but to say, if you ask me, change is not going to have, and we've had that change in the past. As I've indicated, people said, no, it's in our nature, we're chaotic. We fire presidents. So it's us. Another question again?
Thank you, Minister. We have a hand, the gentleman, the numbers are increasing. Yeah, I've pointed to Minister. And then let me give in the order. You'll be number 1, you'll be number 2. Apologies, ladies first. You'll be number 2, you'll be number 3, number 4, number 5. And then we close our session. Yes, you'll be number 6. Apologies. Okay, number 1, please.
Minister, thank you. Erin Bates here from Newsroom Africa, Channel 405. Firstly, you haven't touched on the July unrest of last year, and that was arguably when we saw most sharply ructions and tensions in the ANC cost the economy and indeed lives. Please, can you address this, because it manifests what happens when the party is at its own throat. Secondly, the Auditor General results for this year, she reported some 12 billion rand lost to fraud and law breaking, and that is a conservative estimate, she said. What measures are being taken to improve government spending and accountability at a municipal level as well? And then finally, if you could please speak on the FTAF and the grey listing looming. What engagements have you had? I think you had a report due to them in November. So just to summarize, it's the July unrest, the Auditor General and reporting on spending, and then the grey listing issue. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not trying to limit the questions, at least if we can allow 2 questions so that we... Okay, the gentleman, number 2.
Good morning. Mashudu Sadiq, I'm from Independent Media. Minister, there has been a glaring question about paying of workers in the ANC. What is the status there? How did it even start that the ruling party doesn't have enough money to pay workers? And what is the status right now?
Okay, number 3. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Minister. My name is Begi Twala. I'm the founder and the president of the Township Economic Commission SA. Minister, thank you very much for recognizing the township economy, and thank you very much for supporting township economy. Yes, Comrade Pakstau and Comrade Makura did a wonderful work in giving us TIDA, the Township Economic Development Act, that we are now, making sure that we advocate, we promote, in terms of the township economy. But equally so, we just want to acknowledge and say thank you very much, Putsipo, for giving us an opportunity to be here. Our stand is just right here in front of this room. It's Township Economy Pavilion, which we've got what we call the Township Economy House in Soweto. Because we are saying Township Economy is us. We are Township Economy. The people that are in the township are Township Economy. And we say Township Economy is equal to the main stream of economy. But Putsipo, thank you very much, my leader. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much, PBF, and thank you very much, Minister. Thank you.
Thank you. The gentleman.
Good morning, Minister. Thank you very much. I'm Eugene Toast, German Embassy Financial Counselor, and thank you very much for that insightful speech. My question would be, can you elaborate a little bit on the plan to attract and train skilled people that you mentioned to make the South African economy future-proof?
Thank you. And then the gentleman at the back.
No, thanks. My name is Siden Tlabo from Sidelane Trading, Machaleng, Elkoma, Eneman. To the Minister, I just want to find out what is the position of our government in as far as a constitutional court confirmed the invalidity of GEE. What's going to happen going forward? Thank you.
Thank you. And then the gentleman number 6.
Good morning. I'm Tsepo Maswan from Nyamezela Military. My question really is about trying to find out what are the conversations within Treasury regarding localization of locally produced products. We know that the revised triple PFA does no longer require SOEs to, when you tender, they don't require you to have your products manufactured locally. So we are worried as a local producer of meters and across a couple of other sectors. What is the conversation going forward regarding the compelling of SOEs to actually consider locally produced products for procurement?
Thank you. I was consulting with the Minister on the issue of the ANC salaries from IOL. My understanding is that the employees are paid. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I was going to tell the gentleman the reason I'm not standing as a treasurer of the ANC is precisely those challenges. Yes, I think it's an omission on the July unrest. Not only did it cost life, undermine the infrastructure, it also cost the economy a great deal. My estimate, if I include we had to recapitalize Sazria precisely because they had to meet those obligations, which are huge. The cost estimate I have of that is about 80 billion rand. So it's quite an important thing which we need to make sure that it does not recur. Not only for government, but for people. Most of the people who lost, that's what we're thinking now with Sazria. Most of the people who lost businesses are the people who are not insured, the people who are selling in the street and so on and so on. So it's damaging to everyone. It's something that we need to make sure that it does not recur. We published 2 reports. I'll talk about the Secretary General, on the Auditor General. For provincial and national government, we published Section 32 report, which look at those spending reviews. Which, is something an accounting officer in terms of Public Finance Management Act is the head of that department and is unaccountable to another executive authority. what we've done starting from the 2nd of October or 2nd of November. Every quarter now, we go to Cabinet and table the expenditure reviews. And that forces our colleagues to read. And one of them, as I was going on to Cabinet on the 2nd, calls me, says, "Hey, my team says your numbers are wrong." I said, "That's fine, I've achieved my objective. I wanted you to read the document." You see what I mean? So you've got to focus for people their attention on dealing with these matters. I was not saying my numbers are right or anything. They are free. His people are free to go and debate with my team. But the fact that I've been able to get him and his colleague and his team on the table to look at the budget and the spending areas is a major objective. That's what I wanted to achieve by taking to Cabinet. So we're beginning to do a number of things to force a discussion on these things. On the grey listing, there are two issues. The first one is the regulatory part. The second one relates to some action on the part of government. Within the shortest possible time, we've managed to pilot 3 pieces of legislation in Parliament and then the NCOP, whose main objective are to make sure that we can achieve, have a case when we make our submission to FATF. We also have got a story to tell on some of the work which has been done on dealing with corruption cases and so on and so on. Some of them were lifted in detail when the President made the submission on the Zondo Commission in Parliament. Okay, workers of the ANC, thank God, I'm not the treasurer, I don't even know. The treasurer made a passing remark in his financial report to the NEC, which we think they've been paid. On the township economy, I want to encourage you to engage us. We didn't know that there's a structure to engage us. Let me just tell you an example. The short-term insurance cars. Don't want a car to be towed from Soweto to downtown. They would like to see car repairs accredited in the townships. I'm just using one example, the opportunity that exists. The skilled people. We've published a gazette. We've been talking to the Department of Home Affairs of what category of skills that should be allowed in South Africa. We published that list of skills. The intention is to achieve exactly what we're talking about. To the extent that there may be some challenges with it, we're interested to listen and hear what those challenges are. But we've done that. Tick the box on reforms. The last 2 questions are related because they talk to the Constitutional Court judgment. What the Constitutional Court said is 2 things. I know people blame it rules against me, so I understand. So I'm not saying because they ruled against me, they are wrong. Okay? What the Constitutional Court says, the Constitution gives you power to do all of these things you want to do. The Constitution gives you power to do all of these things you want to do. You chose to limit your powers in the PPPFMA, whatever FA. So you limited your powers yourself. You then can't extend your powers via a secondary legislation called regulations. If you want the powers back, change the act. That's what the Constitutional Court said. People are reading those judges. They just tell us what is true. I'm going to come back to tell you what the second thing they said. The Constitution says the people who procure are state organs, not you. So, state organs, not you. what the second decision, the second point the court said. Both points are correct, by the way. Both points are correct, by the way. So, what are we doing about that? We will submit to Cabinet and Parliament in March a new procurement bill. But before I do that, let me deal with the localization issue. Because the court says I can't procure, which is correct, I don't want to procure in any event. Each organ of the state must procure. But you must provide a framework for that procurement. What does that framework say? The framework is still there in the Procurement Act. It says all of these things. If you go to Uhankizia, I've had a long debate with the Black Business Council on this issue. Oh, there's. Yeah. Now, if you look at that RES regulations we've published, they take about specific goals. What are those specific goals? Are all the objectives we're talking about? But it then says a state organ must develop its own policy. Its own policy, but in taking into account those specific developmental goals, which includes black empowerment, and all of those things and so on, gender, disability, and so on. And the objectives that were set up in the construction and development program. Mind you, the bill was published not in the new dispensation when the specific goals were set out in the RDP Act. So, there's nothing that prevents a state organ not to do localization. If they're not doing it, just mischievous. There's nothing in the regulations. It's like the mischief they say, both Eskom and Transnet. When we have said to them, develop your own procurement policy, your own. Every state organ, whether it's a department or anything, you must develop your own procurement framework in line with the national framework. So that's where the localization debate fits in. So summarize the Constitutional Court. The Constitutional Court has told us our own mistake. We limited our powers in the Preferential Procurement Act. Whereas the Constitution the Constitution gives you two kinds of preferences. Section 27(1)(a), but let me start with B of the Constitution, says is an empowerment thing for previously disadvantaged groups is in the Constitution. Section 217B. 217A says you can also put any preferences of your choice, of categories of preferences of your choice. That's a constitutional dispensation in South Africa, which means if you wanted to have localization, it won't be unconstitutional. It will all not be unconstitutional. We limited ourselves in the Preferential Procurement Act. Granted, we did it in 2 months because we had to meet still the Ministry for Finance at the time in order to meet the constitutional deadlines. But that's what it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister. We are coming to the conclusion of our program, and let me take this opportunity to thank the PBF subscribers for attending this morning business breakfast. Let me also take this opportunity to thank the guests that were invited, the diplomatic community. Last but not least, Minister, thank you for your time, for engagement. We'll be hosting the business breakfast on a regular basis. Tomorrow we'll be hosting the Minister of Energy, Comrade Gwede Madashe. he will be engaging with us. And then day after, which is the 19th, we'll be hosting the Minister of Small Business, Ms. Stella Ndabeni. And then on the last day, we'll be hosting the Minister of ICT and Telecommunication, Minister Chabeni. So these are ongoing engagement. Before you leave, we are having exhibitors. Please take a walk around. We have also designed a business lounge. Those who want to hang around in the business lounge, we have a nice place there. We also have meeting boardrooms for businesses who want to have meetings. Feel free to be here. In that note, ladies and gentlemen, let me, on behalf of PBF, let me thank you for attending our business breakfast.